Feel the high-voltage energy of a story that refused to be silenced by the passing of time. We bring you the electric reality of life's most intense confrontations, wrapped in a cinematic glow that never fades. Hit that subscribe button now and power up your imagination with us.
My Nan is not a woman who cries. In 31 years of knowing her, I have seen her face a foreclosure notice, bury two of her children, and sit through the reading of a will that left her with almost nothing. And she did not cry. She has a way of going still instead, like the air before a storm, like something is deciding. So when she stood in my doorway on a Tuesday morning in March, looked at me holding my daughter against my chest, in a bathrobe I had owned since college, and went completely, absolutely still. I knew something had shifted. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Just looked at me, at the bathrobe, at the baby, at the apartment behind me, which I had tried to make look like a home and mostly failed. Then she said quietly, "Sweetheart, where is your money?" Not a question. The way she said it was not a question. And I didn't know what she meant. That's the part I still have trouble explaining to people. I genuinely did not know what she meant. My Nan built her money slowly, and without fanfare, the way people from her generation did. She had grown up with almost nothing in Western Tennessee, married my grandfather at 22, and spent the next 4 decades turning a single dry cleaning shop into a small regional chain. When my grandfather died, she sold the business, moved into a house on the water in Beaufort, South Carolina, and spent the next decade being, by all appearances, a retired woman who gardened and made very good biscuits and read paperbacks on her screened porch. She never talked about money. That was not something she did. But she was precise about it in the way that people who earned it themselves tend to be. Careful, attentive, not wasteful. When I was 24 and had just finished my nursing degree and was starting my first real job, she called me on a Sunday afternoon and told me she was proud of me. That was unusual enough that I sat down. Then she told me she had set something aside for me, that I would never have to worry about certain things, and that a man named Garrett, her financial manager, someone she had worked with for 15 years, would be in touch. I thanked her. She said not to thank her, just to be smart. I was 24. I thought I understood what she was telling me. I did not understand what she was telling me. I met my husband 4 months later, at a fundraiser for the hospital where I worked. He was handsome in an easy, uncomplicated way. The kind of handsome that doesn't feel threatening because it seems accidental. He laughed at the right moments and asked follow-up questions, and remembered the name of my cat when he texted me 3 days later. His name was Corbin. He worked in commercial real estate. He had a close relationship with his mother, which I thought, at the time, was a good sign. We were married 18 months after we met, in a small ceremony in Beaufort, with my Nan in the front row. I remember looking at her during the vows, and thinking she seemed pleased. I held on to that. I held on to it for a long time after I should have let it go. His mother, Viveka, gave a toast at the reception that was technically kind, and left me with a feeling I couldn't name until much later. She talked about Corbin's capacity for loyalty, his work ethic, his ability to recognize quality. She looked at me once during the whole speech. I told myself I was being sensitive. We moved into an apartment in Charleston. I was working nights at the hospital 3 times a week. Corbin worked long hours, or said he did. The apartment was nice. Nicer than I had expected on our combined income. But Corbin said he had gotten a good deal on the lease. And I believed him because I was not paying close attention to the finances. That was my contribution to what happened. I want to be honest about that. I was not paying close attention. Viveka started coming around within the first month. She had opinions, not aggressive ones, not the kind you could easily push back on. More like a steady current of suggestion that, if you weren't watching carefully, would redirect you without your notice ceasing. She had opinions about the way I organized the kitchen, about the throw pillows I had chosen, about my work schedule and whether night shifts were really sustainable for a newlywed. She delivered all of it warmly, with her head tilted slightly, the way you tilt your head when you're just being helpful. Corbin never said anything, not once. He would look at the middle distance and let her talk, and after she left, he would tell me she meant well. I heard that phrase so many times in the first year of our marriage that I started flinching when I heard the word mean. I want to tell you I said something. I want to tell you I held my ground. I mostly didn't. I worked 12-hour overnight shifts, and came home and tried to sleep, while she called Corbin about things that didn't require calls, and I told myself this was a phase. A lot of things I should not have accepted. I accepted because I was tired, and I thought they were phases. Early in our second year, I got pregnant. I was happy. Genuinely, uncomplicated happy. The way you are when something you wanted arrives and the complications haven't caught up yet. I told Corbin over dinner, and he smiled and hugged me, and said everything was going to be fine, and I believed him, and for about 2 weeks, everything seemed like it might actually be fine. Then Viveka started coming over more often, 3 times a week, sometimes 4. She had opinions about the nursery, about my diet, about whether I should still be working overnight shifts at 22 weeks. The opinions had the texture of care, but the function of control. And I was too tired and too hormonal, and too determined to believe in my marriage to name that clearly. My work schedule got harder. I was covering extra shifts because a colleague was out on leave, and between that and the pregnancy, I was exhausted in a way that sat in my bones. I remember one evening, standing in the hallway of the hospital after a 12-hour shift, unable to remember for a moment what floor I was parked on, just standing there with my badge in my hand thinking, something is wrong. I thought it was the pregnancy. I thought it was the job. I thought a lot of things that were easier than the truth. I want to tell you what I saw one evening in November, about 7 months into my pregnancy. I had gotten off an overnight and I was driving home, and I was hungry, and I stopped at a breakfast place near the waterfront that I liked, and I walked in, and I stood at the host stand, and across the room in a corner booth by the window, I saw Corbin and Viveka having breakfast. This is the part that people in comments have found the hardest to understand, and I understand why, but I need to try to explain it accurately. They were having breakfast. It was a nice restaurant, but not unusually nice. They were talking, and there was a folder open on the table between them, and Corbin had his reading glasses on, the ones he wore when he was looking at documents. I stood there for about 4 seconds, and then I left and got drive-through coffee, and went home and went to sleep. I want to be clear. I did not think this was normal, but I did not think it was what it was. I thought they were planning something, a trip maybe, or something for the holidays. I thought Corbin handled the finances, and this was him handling them. I had questions and I swallowed them. Because swallowing questions had become a habit I had not noticed forming. My daughter was born in January. We named her Elodie. She was early by 3 weeks and small and absolutely perfect, and for a few days I forgot about everything else. The breaking point, when it came, was not dramatic. It was a Tuesday in early spring. Elodie was 8 weeks old. I was on a shorter shift schedule, still exhausted, doing the math in my head every week on what we could spend and what we couldn't. We needed a new car seat. Elodie had outgrown the infant one faster than expected, and I had been putting it off, because the one I wanted was $200, and I was trying to wait until payday. That's where we were. I was waiting until payday for a car seat. I mentioned this to Corbin that evening, just casually, while I was feeding Elodie. He said we'd figure it out. He said it in the way he'd been saying everything lately, slightly distant, slightly in the direction of somewhere else. I don't know why I pushed. Maybe it was the 8 weeks of no sleep. Maybe it was the way he said it. But I said, what does figure it out mean? And he said we'd talk about it later. And I said I'd like to talk about it now. And then there was a long pause and he said, your grandmother hasn't been putting as much in lately. Things are tighter. Went still. Putting in? I said. Putting in where? He looked at me in a way I had never seen before. A recalculating look. The account, he said. The account she set up for you. I said I didn't know about an account. The look on his face lasted about 2 seconds before he smoothed it over. He said I must have forgotten that we had talked about it when we first got married, that my nan sent monthly contributions, and he managed it, that lately the amounts had been smaller. I waited until he was asleep that night. Then I got up, sat in the kitchen with Elodie, and called my nan. She picked up on the second ring. It was 1 a.m, and she picked up on the second ring, which means she was already awake, which means she had the same instincts she has always had. I told her what Corbin had said. There was a silence. Not a confused silence, a different kind. She said, sweetheart, I want you to listen carefully. Garrett calls me every month when the transfer goes through. It has never been smaller. It has always been the same amount. It has been the same amount for 3 years, I said. How much? She told me. I will not repeat the number here because I still have trouble making it feel real, but it was a significant amount, monthly, for 3 years. And I had not seen $1 of it. I sat in the kitchen for a long time after that. Elodie was asleep against my chest. The refrigerator hummed. I thought about the car seat I'd been putting off. I thought about the overtime shifts I'd picked up. I thought about Corbin and Viveka in that restaurant with the folder open between them. I thought about my nan, at 1 a.m, picking up on the second ring. My nan arrived. 2 days later, she drove herself. 6 hours from Beaufair, didn't tell me she was coming, just showed up. That's when I was in the bathrobe at the door. That's when she looked at me and went still. She had already spoken to Garrett. She had already called her attorney, a woman she had worked with for years named Ms. Whitfield, before she got in the car. My nan is many things, but slow is not one of them. She came inside. I made coffee. She looked around the apartment with the same expression she'd worn in the doorway. Not angry, not sad, just extremely, precisely attentive. He has been managing this account, she said. It is in your name. I didn't know it existed, I said. I know you didn't, she said. I know. She didn't say anything else about that. She didn't make me explain or justify or trace back through the years of choices that had landed me in the kitchen, in a bathrobe I'd owned since nursing school. She just accepted what was true, and moved to what to do about it. Miss Whitfield had already filed the first documents. She had a forensic accountant who would begin reviewing the account history within the week. Nan had also quietly changed the transfer instructions with Garrett's so that going forward nothing would go through Corbin. What did he spend it on? I asked. She looked at me. Some of it on real estate that is in his name. Some of it in accounts I don't yet have full visibility into. Some of it, she paused. Some of it on things that were meant to look like household expenses. I thought about the apartment, the nicer seats, the things I had assumed Corbin had handled. Viveka, I said. My Nan set down her coffee cup. There is a property in her name that was purchased 18 months ago, she said. Mrs. Whitfield believes it was purchased with your money. I didn't cry. I'm not sure why. I think I had been carrying the weight of something unnamed for so long that having a name for it was more relieving than anything else. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. The legal process was not quick. I won't pretend it was clean or simple or satisfying, in the way that stories sometimes make justice sound. There were months of depositions and documents and phone calls with Ms. Whitfield that left me sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot, trying to breathe normally before I went in for my shift. But here is what happened. The forensic accountant found 3 years of transfers. Every one of them, every month, every dollar. Systematically redirected within 48 hours of landing in the account Nan had set up for me. The money moved through a series of transfers that were designed to look routine. Corbin had added himself as a joint account holder 6 weeks after our wedding, at a bank branch I had never visited, using documents I did not sign. Ms. Whitfield's team described it as one of the more methodical financial frauds they had documented in a domestic case. Viveka's property, a 3-bedroom house in Mount Pleasant, was purchased with a wire transfer that came directly from my account. Her name was on the deed. Her fingerprints were on the whole thing, and Ms. Whitfield made sure that was documented. Corbin's attorney tried, at various points, to characterize what had happened as a misunderstanding about shared finances, a miscommunication, a difference of approach. Ms. Whitfield is not a woman who entertains miscommunications. The civil judgment came through in October. Corbin was ordered to return the full amount taken, plus damages. The Mount Pleasant property was lined. Viveka, who had retained her own attorney and spent several months insisting she had known nothing about the source of the funds, settled separately in a way that Ms. Whitfield described as appropriate. There is a criminal referral that is still working its way through. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I have been told to be patient. Patience has been something I've had to learn. My Nan bought a small house 12 minutes from me in the spring. She said it was because she had been meaning to spend more time on the mainland anyway. She said the property taxes in Beaufort had gotten unreasonable. She said a lot of things that were not exactly the reason. I did not push her on it. Some things you accept without requiring them to be said out loud. She comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays and holds Elodie while I sleep. Sometimes I come downstairs and they are in the kitchen, and Nan is narrating what she's doing to Elodie in that low, even voice she uses, like Elodie is a small adult who deserves a complete explanation of why biscuits require cold butter. Elodie watches her with enormous concentration. I am working days now. I sleep in my own bed. I bought the car seat I needed. I bought a good one. And every time I click it into the base I think about the Tuesday evening I was waiting for payday, and how much I didn't know about my own life. I have thought a lot about what I would do differently. I've thought about it with the specific cruelty that hindsight brings. All the moments I could have asked a question and didn't. All the times I looked at something that was wrong and found an explanation that was easier. I've thought about the folder on the restaurant table. I've thought about the word later, and how many times I let it stand in for an answer. Here's what I've settled on. I was targeted by someone who was very good at being patient. Corbin did not fall in love with me and then change. He saw what I had, what my Nan had given me, what I didn't know I had, and he made a plan, and the plan included being someone I could trust, and he was very convincing. I trusted him because he worked hard at being trustworthy. There is a version of this story where I spend a lot of energy being angry at myself for that. I am trying not to live in that version. My Nan put it simply, the way she puts most things. We were sitting on her porch in the evening, a few months after the judgment came through, and I was going through the particular kind of spiral I still sometimes go through. The accounting of mistakes, the backward math. And she let me go for a while and then she said, "He knew what he was doing. You didn't. That's not the same thing." She went back to her book. I sat with that for a while. It took me some time to hold on to that distinction, but I hold on to it now. I hold on to it the way I hold on to the memory of the phone call at 1 a.m, and the way she picked up on the second ring, and the way she said, "I know you didn't," without a single extra word. Like that was the only answer, and it was enough, and we would move from there. We did.